is good to be back. We came in from Lincoln, Nebraska. Today we left about 3:30. Got into 6, pulled into Cox Barbecue. Nebraska boys, how was Cox? There's some of the Nebraska guys that came down from Lincoln with us tonight. But it's good to be back in Manhattan. I love being back at K-State, driving in on Total Creek Boulevard, seeing Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I was like, man, this feels right. This feels good. So I went to school here. I went to school here for 4.5 years. I was a math education major and ran track for 4 years while I was here. Loved it, being on the team here. And so yeah, I got to graduate from here. And then the last 5 years, worked with STUMO here on staff for 5 years, yeah. 5, and then we just moved this last summer up to Lincoln, Nebraska. So we're kind of helping start up STUMO there at UNL, and so it's been fun. So my whole closet has changed from purple to red. It's been quite the mix-up, and so my laundry used to be like purple, black, and gray when I did laundry. Now it's like red and white, so it's been kind of a mix. But deep in the core, man, I still bleed purple, and I love coming back to K-State. So that's my wife, Rachel. This is our family. This is Titus, that's our son, and then Brady, and so these are the kids. We took some family pics the other day. Titus was refusing to take a solo shot without sticks, so there he is. And then he's 3.5, Brady is 1.5, and she's just got me wrapped around her finger, these big blue eyes, super sweet, and so that's our family. So we've been enjoying Lincoln, Nebraska a ton. And so, but it's going to be fun to be with you guys tonight. Like they said, we're starting a brand new series. You guys have been in this series in the past several weeks called Searching. Just what are we seeking in life? What are we looking for? But tonight we're kicking off a brand new series called Misconceptions. Just different things that people can have misunderstandings about Jesus, about God, about faith. And so really to the end of the semester, we're just going to be talking about a lot of different misconceptions. And so, I do want to define it really quick. I just typed this into Google. Hey, define misconceptions. It says this: a view or an opinion that is incorrect because based on faulty thinking or understanding. So maybe you've had different people, culture, whatever it might be, tell you something and you kind of just instantly believe it. Maybe it's a misunderstanding of some sort. Because like with a misconception, it's like culture tells us things, right? Social media tells us things. People in life tell us things. And honestly, I feel like we have misconceptions because one, we just too easily believe what we hear. Or we also have misconceptions because we aren't willing to do the hard work to really seek out what's actually true. And so that's what this whole series is going to kind of be about. We just want to help and unpack and talk through things about misconceptions that people can have about faith and about God. And really kind of go to in the Bible and what God says about these different misconceptions. And so, you know, we all have these. People always have different misconceptions. I had a misconception about K-State. Like, I grew up in Kansas City. I actually grew up a KU basketball fan. And so, like, my dad just painted this picture of, we don't like K-State. People at K-State are weird. We don't like people from Manhattan. We don't root for them in anything. So, at first, I never even considered K-State as an option for college. I had a huge misconception about it, right? But took my visit senior year, and the rest is history. Fell in love with Manhattan, fell in love with the campus, but I initially had a misconception. So we're going to be talking about that idea for the rest of the semester. But tonight specifically, what are we talking about? I want to start with this: possible or impossible. Okay, I'm just going to walk through a few scenarios. Just shout it out. What you guys think? First one: Tiger Woods winning another major. Possible or impossible? What do you think? Possible? Yeah? I go back and forth on this one. His body has just been through the ringer, but I'm like, oh, it's Tiger Woods. This guy's like Superman. I don't know. Possible or impossible? Snapchat or Instagram like ever dying out, coming to an end? Possible? You guys think it might come to an end? Okay, maybe there's going to be a new app that gets created. It's kind of crazy. As Snapchat came out my sophomore year of college, and it's still hanging. For our Chiefs fans in the room, Patrick Mahomes getting 7 or more Super Bowls. Possible? How about impossible? A little bit more impossible, okay? This one's tough too, man. It's a lot to win a Super Bowl. Okay? Next one, someone beating Usain Bolt's 100-meter dash record, 9.58. Possible? Okay? Impossible. track world, I personally think this one, I don't know if anyone's going to beat that for a while. That's most guys are coming in at like 10 flat, 9.9, and 9.58. That's a different type of fast. But anyway, we all think things are impossible at different times. I think things are impossible all the times. A few years ago, I always said it was impossible for a 16 seed to beat a 1 seed. Just not possible. But a few years ago, UMBC, the Retrievers, man, they take down the #1 seed, Virginia. It is possible. Okay? I also said, hey, when it comes to the playoffs and basketball coming down 3-1, history would also say it's probably impossible, but for the first time ever, the Cavs come back. I said it was impossible, right? They come back down against the Warriors, the best team ever in the history of basketball statistically, and LeBron James and the Cavs did the unthinkable, and they came back and won, NBA champions, and where LeBron really cemented himself as the GOAT of all time in basketball. So, come on. But anyway, I think things are impossible all the time. And if we think about for each one of us all personally, we all think things are impossible, just in different aspects of life. We all have these types of feelings where we have doubt, and we have these thoughts where things can be impossible. And like going into a class, like, hey, I'm in human body this semester, Chem 2, engineering physics, like, impossible to get an A. B it is. Or fellas, it's like, man, there's this girl that you want to go after, but she's way out of your league, so you kind of think it's impossible, but you never even take a chance. Just not going to take a shot. And there's so many different areas in life where we think things are impossible. And so I want to start with this thought tonight, is when we doubt, we miss out. A lot of different times in life we doubt, and it's like, why do we think so many different things are impossible? Oftentimes it's probably because it's never been done before. Maybe we have an improper view of who is involved. Maybe culture tells us that it's impossible. Maybe it's just something as simple as fear, that we think things are impossible. But when we doubt, we're going to miss out. Think if man, the number 16 seed a few years ago at UMBC, what if they just had this doubt, it's impossible to be #1 seed. They just would have given up, and they never go down as the first team in history to ever be a #1 seed as a 16 seed. What if the Cavaliers had doubt? It's impossible. History would say you can never come back, being down 3-1. They would have given up, thrown in the towel, lose 4-1, and they never get to be crowned as NBA champions. When you doubt, you're going to end up missing out. And so tonight I wanted to start with that, because our first misconception is this: that it's impossible to follow Jesus in college. We might have some doubt about that. We might think it's not possible to really thrive in our faith, to really know God, and to really follow Jesus in our college years. We might even think that's impossible. But I really want to talk about tonight just a little bit of things of why we actually think it might be possible, and you really can follow Jesus in college. So I want to define following Christ first. Following Jesus. So it's like, if I think this specific thing is impossible, well, let's define it, okay? For my best guess, like being in a committed relationship with Jesus that results in knowing Him and obeying Him. So it's following Jesus means that at some point in life, a person has made a choice to, man, I'm going to turn from living for myself and for living for sin, and I'm going to actually make a choice to really begin to live for Jesus. We're in this now daily relationship, and He's now the Lord of my life. So this is what following Jesus all entails. And doing that specifically in college, and I really do think it's a misconception when we think it's impossible. But why do we think that? Most likely it's because we came to college thinking, oh, college is this certain 4 years where I get to live in this certain way. Maybe an older sibling is like, oh no, this is what college is supposed to be like. Man, put faith on the back burner. Maybe it's just wild and crazy. Uncle John says, oh man, college needs to be like this. Man, you got faith for a lot different time after graduation. College should be like this. Culture might tell us something different about your college years. To where we can kind of begin to have this misconception that we can't follow Jesus in college. You know, it's a normal feeling to have doubt, right? We all have that. It's a very normal thing to think that something is impossible. And especially like when it comes to faith, right? But what I love about the Bible is that people back then, when it comes to faith and to following Jesus, they experienced similar feelings, similar emotions. Some doubt. Man, is this even possible? Man, Jesus, are you actually capable of this? Is it worth it, man, to follow Jesus? Can I really trust him with certain things? This is when Jesus is going to feed 5,000 people when they really don't have any food. And these are some guys that are really beginning to follow Jesus for the first time. And they're in this convo like, man, we don't really have anything to feed these 5,000 people with, but Jesus says this. He says, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. And they answered, we have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Like, Jesus, we can't do this. We got like a couple footlongs from Subway and 2 fish, right? They doubt. They doubt Jesus and what he's capable of doing. Another scenario, a couple chapters later, no, the same chapter, Peter doubts Jesus. So Peter's in this moment, this guy's beginning to really follow Jesus, and he's on this moment where Jesus wants to have him come and walk on water. And they had this dialogue that says, then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. He says, you have little faith. Why did you doubt? Similar feeling. And can I really trust Jesus? Can I really go all in with Jesus? It's not possible. So that's what I love about so much about the Bible is these people, they feel so many similar things that we feel as well, even in 2021. And so what I want to look at tonight is like when we actually have a proper view of Jesus, when we actually have a proper view of what Jesus is really capable of, and I really do think we can follow Jesus in college. Now you can make a case that it's the best time to begin following Jesus is in college. So tonight, I just want to look at 3 really quick things. Wow, I really do believe that it is possible to follow Jesus in college during your college years. It's 4 years in Manhattan, Kansas. And the first one is this, is the power of Jesus. When we have an accurate view of who Jesus is, what he is capable of doing, I think it can give us a lot of confidence in moving forward with him and the power of Jesus. Just look at just these few quick things. Mark 6, Jesus himself walked on water. Matthew 8, he tells a storm to stop, and it does. He brings a little girl back to life. He heals a deaf man who had been deaf his whole life. John 9, he heals a blind man who had been blind his whole life. Mark 2, he heals a paralyzed man. John 11, he brings a man named Lazarus back to life. And in Acts 9, there's a man named Saul who begins to follow Jesus. Saul was a man who persecuted Christians, threw Christians in jail, killed Christians, wanted nothing to do with following Jesus. But he has this interaction with Jesus and he begins to follow him. And the power of Jesus totally changes his life. And we could list off so many different examples of this. But when we understand the power of Jesus, he can totally change a life. He can change a college student's life. And what I love so much about just the personal power of Jesus, when someone does begin to really follow him and go all in with Jesus, that same power begins to live within us. This is Romans 8:11, the first half of verse 11 in chapter 8. It says, the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. So when someone makes this choice to begin following Jesus, to kind of go all in with him, the same power that Jesus did all those miracles, that same power will actually begin to live inside of you. Gives me a ton of confidence, right? Another one, this is Galatians 2:20. Again, this is a guy named Paul talking about how he's begun to follow Jesus. He says, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. It's the power of Jesus that begins to take place within us. He takes a permanent residence inside of us when we begin to follow Jesus. The Jesus that did all these things, all these miracles, changed all these different lives. If I begin to give him full control of my life and say, hey, all chips in, I'm on the table, I'm ready to follow you, he will actually begin to take place in your heart. It's the power of Jesus that enables us to follow him. And I believe so much in the power of Jesus because I've seen it change a lot of my friends' lives. When I was in college, and I graduated 6 years ago, I've seen it just time and time again on different campuses here at K-State, just how the power of Jesus has changed so many different people's lives. This is my friend Palmer and his wife Anna. Palmer was a phi-sci over at KU. Was living for the college world, the college scene, and late in college, his junior year, the power of Jesus totally changed his life. Began to walk with God in college, in a fraternity at KU. Same thing happened with his now wife. She was in AKO at KU, and they're now married. The power of Jesus changed their life. This is Jared and Mike. They're some of my friends. They lived in the dorms over at Mizzou. Both began following Jesus in college, and they just really walked with God all throughout their college years. And the power of Jesus really enabled them to. This is Laramie and Ashley. They played soccer here. They graduated a couple years ago. They were friends with my wife when we were here at K-State. Both began following Jesus spring of their freshman year of college. Walked with God all throughout their college years as they were playing college athletics. And they really began to experience the power of Jesus. Totally changed their life. Came into college wanting the D1 athlete life, the college scene, but God had something totally different in store. This is my friend Reese Randall. He played football at KU. Same thing. Began to really walk with God in college. Began to follow Jesus in Lawrence, Kansas. The power of Jesus changed his life. The girl in this picture is one of my really good friends from college. Her name is Paige. She was in the Chi sorority here. Began following Jesus her freshman year of college. And totally faith was not on her radar at all. And ironically, now she ended up marrying my brother-in-law. He was a former atheist. Really began to follow Jesus about 7 years ago. And now they're married. It's the power of Jesus. This is Ethan and Jared. They lived in Moore Hall here. They were some of my best friends in college. I'll talk about them later. But both came into college and are really looking to grow in their faith. But the power of Jesus changed their life. And when Jesus began to move inside their heart, they really began to thrive in their faith all throughout college. I've just seen it time and time and time again of how the power of Jesus has changed college students' lives. That's how I believe in so much that it's possible to follow Jesus. It's because of the power. Jesus walked on water. He made a blind man see. He raised a dead man back to life. He himself rose from the dead. And I think he can help a college student in Manhattan, Kansas, follow Jesus in a college culture. I don't think that's too much of a task for him. It's because of the power. Not only because of the power of Jesus, our second thing I want to look at tonight is the promise of Jesus. God and Jesus give us so many different promises in the Bible, and I want to key in on one tonight. This is Matthew 28, verse 20. It's the back half. So this is Jesus is about to go to heaven, and there's been this group of like 12 guys that have been sold out following Jesus. And these are his final words before he's about to go back to heaven, and he gives them this promise. He says, "And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." He gives them a promise. He gives them his word. He said, "Man, are you guys going to trust this or not?" He's like, "Hey, I'm going to be with you the entire way as you begin to follow me. I'm not going to leave you high and dry." It's a big promise. So it's like, man, if Jesus is giving us this promise, it's like, how do I know if I can trust the promise of Jesus? Can I really call him on his word, on his promise? Even in an earthly sense, anytime we get a promise from someone, how do we know if we can trust people or not? It's like, if they're nice, do we trust them? What if they go to KU? Do you trust them? Who knows? Like, what if they wear jorts? Like, trust them? It's like, I don't know. How do we know if we can trust people or not in life? What if they're cute? What if they're good looking? Who knows? But in life, man, we know if we can trust someone if they have kept their promises in the past, right? And you guys are like, growing up in high school, middle school, you'll tell a secret to a friend. Like, oh, you can tell me, I won't tell anyone. 3 days later, your secret's out. You guys been there before? And you guys have that friend, right? I know you guys are that friend. That's good. But no, in all seriousness, we know that we can trust somebody when they give us a promise, is if they've kept their promises in the past, right? So now it's time, we got to figure out, can I actually trust Jesus? Can I really trust what God says? And there's about 7,000 promises in the Bible from God and Jesus. 7,000. Okay? What's Jesus and God, like, what's their track record? Have they been keeping those? In the Bible, God reveals his track record. This is Joshua 23, verse 14 on the back. It says, "Not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has been killed. Every promise has been fulfilled. Not one has failed." He's got a 100% track record. Every time God and Jesus give their word, 100% chance they're going to fulfill it. It says not one has been failed. I was a math major in college. That's really good probability. 100%. I don't get to use my major much anymore, so I need to throw that in there. 100% success rate. When we think about the promise of Jesus, when we think about the promises of anyone, and especially Jesus, and when we can trust it, we can really begin to move forward with a lot of confidence. So when we're thinking about this whole idea of following Jesus in college, and Jesus says, hey, I'll be with you the whole way, you can call him on his word, and you can really trust him with it. In an earthly sense, again, LeBron James, you guys can't tell I'm a LeBron James fan. This is a really cool story. Back in 2018, the LeBron James Family Foundation, they wanted to start up a new school. It's called the I Promise School. And for a while, they weren't actually meeting in a school building, but they've got elementary, middle school, and high school. In the very first graduating class, back in 2018, they were freshmen at the time, said, hey, if you guys graduate from the I Promise School, the first graduating class, there's 193 grads, says, I will pay for all 4 years of your college at Kent State University, there in Ohio, where he's from. It's an $8 million promise. Okay? $8 million. So he told us them this 3 years ago. They're freshmen at Kent State right now. They started the fall of 2021. How did they know when they were freshmen LeBron can actually trust you with that? My whole college tuition paid for, no college debt. If they've been able to trust LeBron in the past. So when he opens up the I Promise School and he says free tuition for the kids that go to the I Promise School, check. Free uniforms, check. Free breakfast and lunch every day, check. Free transportation to school, check. Free bicycles for students who can ride their bike to school, free bike, check. Free access to a food pantry over the weekends, check. I'm going to start up an actual I Promise School building for us all to meet at every single day for school, check. He has kept his word every single time. So for that very first graduating class of students, you think they could trust LeBron that, hey, you'll actually pay for my college? Absolutely. Because he's kept his word every single time in the past. And so for us, it's like this promise of Jesus. We're not dealing with LeBron James. He's a great guy. But we're talking about Jesus, this guy that invites us to follow him, and he gives us his promise. I think he gives us a lot of confidence to move forward. He says, I will be with you always. And that means in college. That means at the party Friday night. That means when you fail a test. That means when you get dumped by your boyfriend of 3 years. That means when you don't get the internship that you wanted. That means when you're not getting the playing time that you're hoping for on your athletic team. And that means when you're being tempted to sin. That means when your friends are dogging on you because you're now growing in your faith. And you could list out 100 more scenarios in college. But Jesus is like, hey, I'm going to be with you always. Not going to leave you high and dry. And I think we can really trust him. Have this legitimate relationship with God in college because of the promise he gives us. So we've got the power of Jesus. We've got the promise of Jesus. And our last one tonight is the people of Jesus. You guys know what always stinks in life? Is having to do something really challenging or hard alone. You ever thought about that? Preparing for like a hard test alone, Calc 2, engineering physics, organic chem, biology, human body. Trying to study for those things alone stinks, doesn't it? Like, I could never do my Calc 2 homework in college. Trying to go at it alone, not fun. Trying to stay committed to an intense workout plan for like a whole semester. Trying to do that alone, that's tough. Trying to imagine pumping your entire homecoming float alone. That would stink, right? You know, girls, apparently going to the bathroom alone is challenging. You're always going in groups. I don't get it. This summer, like when we moved from Nebraska, trying to like do that alone, I couldn't have done it. It would have been impossible. I can't move couches by myself. I can't move washers and dryers by myself. All these boxes and things. I couldn't have done it alone. We had a ton of help. But just trying to do anything hard and challenging in life alone is tough. And I think when we look at what it means to really follow Jesus in college, That for sure seems impossible to do if I think about doing that alone. And Jesus doesn't want it to be like that. When we begin to follow Jesus, he will give us the people that are also following Jesus. This is Philippians chapter 1, verse 27. So a guy named Paul here, we talked about earlier, he's writing to a group of Christians. They're now following Jesus, and as they're beginning to grow, he tells them this. He says, just one thing. As citizens of heaven, live your life worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or am absent, I will hear about you, that you are standing firm in one spirit, in one accord, contending together for the faith of the gospel. What's he telling them to do? He's like, hey, just one thing as you guys are following Jesus. He says, don't go at this thing alone. Man, be in one faith. Be in one spirit. He says, contend together. This word contend is a really cool word. In the Greek, it's the word synathleo. You hear the word athleo in it, it's where we get our word athlete or athletics. And then it gets paired with this word syn, S-Y-N, which means with. Right? So he's saying, hey, if you're going to really go at this thing about following Jesus, man, contend together. Really compete as athletes together. Paul is using, like in 2021 lingo, man, get your sports team together with other athletes and go at this thing. This isn't some like haphazard, easy thing that you're going to go at together and following Jesus. So he says, contend. It's a very aggressive, athletic term here. And he says, you need teammates. You need other people who are going at it. 2 Timothy 2, verse 22. You can go here next. Let me go there for me, Sims. 2 Timothy 2, 22. So this is Paul, again, talking to a guy that he's been helping grow in his faith for a number of years. Paul knows that he's about to die, and Timothy is kind of like his key man. He's like, hey, Timothy, as you're going to begin following Jesus, just do this one thing. He says, flee the evil desires of youth. He says, pursue righteousness, love, faith, and peace. So he's saying, hey, flee sin. He said, man, don't begin to live for the world anymore. But he says, hey, pursue the things of God. And on the very back end, what does he say? He says, but do this along with others who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. AKA, Timothy, I'm about to die and go to heaven, but one thing that you need to do, don't do this thing alone. Do it with other people who are following Jesus. You know, for me in college, it was my friends Ethan, Morgan, and Jared. I began following Jesus when I got to college, spring break of my freshman year. Came into college, wanted nothing to do with God, began to live for the college world, the student-athlete D1 world. God wasn't on my radar at all. But I began to wrestle with all this stuff about following Jesus, didn't even know what that would be like. But spring break of my freshman year of college, I became a Christian. I said, hey God, all chips on the table, I want to follow you. I had no friends that were Christians. Zero. No guys on the team, no guys from high school, zero. So I'm like, what do I do? And God just, in a really gracious way, gave me the people of Jesus. Ethan had recently begun following Jesus. Morgan was playing football and the team was following Jesus. Jared had become a Christian a few months prior before I did. And I had never even known these guys. But I began getting a Bible study with these guys. There was an older guy in his faith that was helping me grow as well. Again, got put in a Bible study with these guys. And I attribute so much of my growth in college because of these guys. Was taking growth opportunities like coming to Stumo night, meeting other people of Jesus, looking at their faith, growing in their faith. And I went to like the winter conference that you guys have maybe heard about called SMC in Kansas City this year. SMC was one of the greatest investments I've ever made in my entire life. 96 hours, just four days, 96 hours that totally changed my life. And I was seeing students from KU, from Mizzou, from Arkansas, from Texas, from K-State. And this guy from Mizzou ended up being in my wedding one day. These people that were growing in their faith, I saw it for the first time at SNC. Like, this is for real. Like, I can actually do this in college. I know you guys have heard about SNC and everything. Like, please go. Like, I beg you to go. $200. It was 96 hours that totally changes who I am today as a person. And you're going to get to experience the other people of Jesus from your own campus, from your other campuses as well. Nebraska, we're going to be there too, Dave. Come on. This is the people of Jesus. It was these guys, Ethan, Morgan, Jared, other K-State people. other campus. It was the people of Jesus, and I mean this in the most sincere way. For me in college, following Jesus, like the people of Jesus was the most tangible way that it made this thing possible. On a day in, day out, week by week day, walking here in the same places that you guys are walking, going to class, Cardwell Hall, all these different things, here in Manhattan. It was the people that made it tangible for me to really follow Jesus in college. And I love that Jesus gives us those people. And so, man, I've mentioned a lot of different people tonight that have had their lives changed by Jesus through the promise, the power, really just the people. And but I want to welcome Scott Hooten. He's a senior here, so you guys might know Scott. But he's going to talk about how following Christ used to be a misconception for him. And so, welcome Scott.
Thanks, Simon. So yeah, I grew up kind of going to church here and there, and I played soccer growing up. I was pretty average, but basically it was kind of like whenever I didn't have a soccer game on Sunday, I'd end up in church. And so that was kind of my mindset with faith all through high school. It was kind of when I had time for it. And as I actually started to think about college, I remember talking to some older brothers I have about their experience in college, what I should live for. And I remember them talking about, hey, it's the best 4 years of your life, but you gotta live it up, you gotta party, and you gotta make some memories that way. So I remember that was my mindset, and I remember the first time driving up to Manhattan on I-70, getting off on Bill Snyder Highway. My dad's in the passenger seat, he's snoring, obviously. And I get off and I cross the river and I see for the first time the beautiful Manhattan Hill ever, glistening in the sun. It's perfect, I love it. But it was that moment I was like, man, what am I actually going to give these 4 years to? And I kind of had some things I decided to live for. I was in the fraternity, and so obviously I had to have a reputation. I had to maintain that. And with that, I absolutely realized that I'm in college, and so I got to get good grades. I had to live for my GPA. And then the last thing was partying, obviously, because that's the way I thought I was going to get the most of my 4 years at K-State. And so faith really wasn't a given priority for me, and as Tommy kind of mentioned, my mindset was, I don't think it's possible to pursue Christ in college, and I don't think it's worth my 4 years to pursue Christ in college. And so faith didn't really pop up until a couple weeks into college. Me and my friend Matt were at the most magical place in Manhattan. It's called the West Loop Dillons. Anyone ever eaten the Chinese there? The Chinese there is fantastic, okay? And so I'm serving up my chow mein with Matt, and we're just kicking it. And Matt's kind of an older guy in the house, and he's talking about his faith. And he asked me, hey, like, have you thought about following Jesus in college? And I said something to him. I was like, man, Matt, like, I don't really want to look at faith in college. I want to push that off. I want to live for the things I want to live for. And so that was kind of that. And we finished our fortune cookies, and he dropped me back off the house. And for about 2 months, I really was just prioritizing grades, my reputation in my fraternity, and partying. And so 2 months kind of goes by. I actually start to become pretty good friends with this guy named Jack. And Jack's my pledge dad, and so we kick it a lot, we hang out. And one time, we're playing this game called PGA Tour on the Xbox. Jack smokes me, and so I sit back, and I ask Jack, I say, Jack, like, you live differently than other guys in the house, obviously. And I was like, why do you live the way you live? And Jack made it pretty clear. He just talked about his relationship with God, that he had gotten through Jesus Christ and what he did for him on the cross. And I remember thinking, man, if Matt was prioritizing his faith in college, and Jack was also doing it, then I could actually do it. Like, there was a shot I could follow Christ, but still I wasn't convinced that was the best use of my time in college. And so we kind of continued to have conversations about faith and what it looked like for me to decide to follow Christ, but I mean, I continued to live for those things. And really what it came down to was, if I did follow Christ, I was afraid. I was afraid of what people would think of me, my reputation in the house. I was afraid that guys wouldn't respect me, that I would lose some friendships. And I was also afraid that I would give in to temptation and that I'd let God down in some way. And so I continued to push that decision off. I actually ended up at a place called SMC, which Tommy was talking about. Incredible experience, fun time, good memories. But the thing that was most important for me about SMC was it really did answer some questions I had about faith in college, about God, about His Word, what He wanted for my life. And those things were really cool to learn about, but man, still I pushed that decision off. and still have those fears and misconceptions about faith. Later that winter break, I'm all by myself. It's like 1:30 a.m. I'm sitting back in my house in Olathe, Kansas, and it's dark, it's silent, it's just me. I'm like a home intruder comes in, I'm toast. Like he's got me, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking about God. I'm thinking about all the things I've learned so far. And the thought kind of dawns on me. It wasn't like some voice in my head, it was just me realizing that, man, if Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago actually paid for my sin on a cross because he loved me, he died there, and he rose from the dead, then that kind of called for a response for my life. It wasn't like, man, it was a feeling, it was just a realization that he was worthy of my life. It didn't matter what phase of life I was in, he was worthy of my decision. And so that's kind of when I went all in. I decided, man, Christ is worth it, and I trusted him with my life. I decided that whatever direction he pushed me in was the direction I wanted to go. And so that winter break, the rest of that, kind of learned how to read the Bible and understand it, kind of learn what it looked like to pray to God and prioritize a relationship with him that way. And Jack was a big help with that. But that winter break was great. I mean, that second semester was coming up really quick, which meant I was going to be in the environment I was afraid of, the party environment. And you know, I was a new Christian, but I was still going to parties to have fun and kick it and build relationships with guys. And so pretty soon I found myself at the first party back from winter break, and guys are excited. You know, I walk into the house. You know, it's like typical fraternity house party, like floor sticky. You gotta like pick your like shoes up to walk, right? It makes like a sound when you step, that kind of thing. And music's like bumping. You know, we're having a good time, but I like walk in and I see my friend from across the party, and he makes eye contact with me. He's like my best friend from high school. He makes eye contact with me, he points, and he starts like fist pumping my way, right? And so naturally I'm like, yeah, like I'll walk to you. And yeah, so we get to talking, we're catching up about our winter breaks, and SMC comes up, I tell him about that, and then I kind of realize, man, I should tell him about this decision that I just made. And I'm kind of sweating, I'm nervous, I got the stains going, you know, like thinking about this, and I just say, hey man, you know, I actually made this decision to like follow Christ over winter break. And he kind of looks at me and he nods, and he goes, cool man, that's awesome. And then he walks away. And we had some conversations later after that were really meaningful, but it was cool because in that moment I realized that this guy actually respected me a lot because of my decision to follow Christ. And because I actually had built my relationship with him on Jesus, it was built on things that mattered, and so it made my relationships a lot more meaningful. And I found that to be the case with most of my friends as well. There were some guys that, yeah, you know, didn't really understand how I lived, but still respected the way I lived. And so I found that, like Tommy was saying, a lot of the things that helped me continue to live out faith was the fact that I had other guys pursuing Christ alongside me. And I came to kind of realize as well that, you know what, I did slip up a little bit, I did give in some temptations, but man, God's powerful because my relationship with him, he's always with me, and that's a powerful thought. And so I'm just thankful for the last like 2.5 years of just getting to know God in college, and man, I'm just excited to continue to pursue Christ.
It's fun to see the example tonight. It's fun to just see the example of a student here at K-State with Scott, and also and so many other guys here in this room. But it's possible. Like it is possible to really follow Jesus, to really know him, to walk with God in your college years. I mean, he's going to give us these things. He's going to give us, man, just the power. He's going to give us the promise, and he gives us the people to really do it. And so now, as we wrap up tonight, just kind of just some self-reflection time, just asking yourself, and do I actually think it's possible to follow Jesus in college? Like at the end of the day, do I really believe that's possible? I mean, if you guys have doubts, man, what are they? I put the blank box at the bottom of your sheet. That's just for you, like, man, just write in there just doubts you might have, and why I don't think this might be possible. Questions I have, maybe some misconceptions about faith that I still have. I mean, feel free to just write it in that box tonight. Maybe you have a friend here who is following Christ, and you can talk to them about some of the doubts you might have. Hey, I don't know if it is possible. What will this even look like for me? And so maybe you're here tonight and say, hey, I just need to talk that person. Maybe you're here tonight and you've been thinking about following Christ. Like you're really wrestling with this, man, do I really want to go all in with Jesus in my college years? And maybe you're nervous about it, but your next step is just to dive in, to go for it. Man, trust the power, trust the promise, and trust the people that God will put in your life to really do it. And maybe you're in here tonight, like maybe you recently started following Christ within the last week, month, who knows? Maybe it's been challenging so far, maybe it's been hard a little bit, maybe there's been some struggles, but know that it is possible. Man, keep going. That's what I would say to you, just keep going. Man, press into the power, press into the promise, and really press into the people of Jesus. It really is possible. So we started with this thought tonight. When we doubt, we miss out. When you think something is impossible and you don't even give it a chance, you're always going to miss out. Anything in life. When you think it's impossible and you have these doubts, you're always going to miss out. But specifically when it comes to following Jesus, how does this apply? When we don't think it's impossible, when we don't think it's possible to follow Jesus in college, what are we actually missing out on? You're missing out on eternal life. When someone makes that decision to follow Jesus, to go all in with Him, and they inherit eternal life. AKA, I go to heaven when I die. And I don't want you guys to miss out on that. You're also going to miss out on just knowing God. While you are here on earth, you can have a thriving relationship with Him. You can know the Creator of the universe, what He's like, how He moves in your own heart and your own life for the rest of your being. You're going to miss out on eternal life. You're going to miss out on knowing God. And the third, you're going to miss out on just an everlasting purpose to give your life to. In the Bible, as you begin to read it and you talk to other people about it, God makes it very clear why He created us. Like there's a very specific reason why God made us. He gives us this everlasting purpose. In this series that you guys just came off after searching, you don't have to search for purpose anymore. Like God tells us straight up, this is why you exist. And when we begin to follow Jesus, you get to step into that. And I don't want you guys to miss out on those three things. I don't want you guys to miss out on eternal life. I don't want you guys to miss out on knowing God. And I don't want you guys to miss out on knowing and really experiencing why you exist. And you get to just step into this life that God designed to actually be like. When you go all in and really follow Jesus. So, the thought that it's impossible to follow Jesus in college. It's a misconception. When you think about it, Jesus would not invite us to do something that was impossible. You ever thought about that? He's not going to invite you to do something that is impossible because He's given us His power, He's given us His promise, He's given us His people. And my hope is that we would just trust Him. In a very simple and genuine and raw, authentic way, just trust Him on it. And you'll really get to experience life how God designed it to be. So I'm going to pray really quick, then we'll have some discussion questions up here and kind of talk, and the MCs will kind of wrap us up tonight. So God, thanks for tonight. God, just thank you. And for K-State, God, thanks for all the people in here. And God, we just love just that you've really given us your Son, Jesus. Thanks for the power that He's displayed and how He's continuing to display it. Thanks for the promise that you give us. And God, just thanks for the people that you give us to. And God, just for the folks in here that's like, they may have doubts, they may think it's impossible. And God, help them to have faith, to have the faith that we can really follow you in college. For those that are in here that they are following you, God, continue just to help them to know you, help them really have a thriving relationship with you during their college years and for the rest of their life. So thank you for tonight, Lord. We're grateful. And just thank you for how you really sent Jesus to give us purpose, to give us life. And so we pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.